What's up everybody, welcome back to Double T Gaming. We are back with another class comparison between Turtle WoW and Project Epoch. And today, we'll be looking at the Mage. After we get through this one, I think Druid's going to be next on the list. Now I just want to say a quick thank you again for all the support and suggestions in the comment section. I try to go through and read as many as I can, and I love hearing everyone's feedback overall in the videos. One big piece of feedback I hear is my resolution. I am trying to fix it. I am playing on 1920 by 1080p on Turtle WoW and Project Epoch, but I think it's still really stretched for some reason. I think it's a bug with like the client with multiple monitors. I don't really know. If you have any suggestions of what I can do, please help me out because I don't know what's going on. But no more small talk or anything like I did in the last video. Let's just dive right into it and first do a little rewind on the Mage class in Vanilla WoW. So just to say it straight out flat, their toolkit was ahead of its time by 1 or 2 expansions. They could teleport themselves and their friends basically anywhere in the world when traveling in Vanilla was already a huge burden. They had strong crowd control ability, and most importantly, in my opinion, they were the undisputed kings of leveling and gold making. Thanks to their insane AoE potential, mages could start farming dungeons like ZF and Sunken Temple, starting at level 40, all the way up to level 60, not even in the open world, making them not just efficient, but arguably the best overall levelers in the entire game. In raids though, at least from my perspective, looking at other mages when I'm raiding MC or BWL, they were basically just a one-button spec who can hit Frostbolt the fastest, which I guess could be pretty boring. But the trade-off for that was that, again, mages were some of the best gold makers in the game. They could literally sell boosts to people, pay 50 gold for 5 runs, make thousands of gold a day just doing that. I think it's actually some people's full-time job to make and sell gold like that, and that alone kept them popular. But Turtle WoW and Project Epoch have shaken things up a bit in their own way, so let's dive in and see what these servers have done to keep the mage experience a little bit fresh. So let's start with Project Epoch. Now the entire idea behind all of Epoch with all of their classes, it seems, is to rework them into a TBC Wrath mix and place it in Vanilla WoW. And I've said this in my past videos, it's almost like a revamped pre-patched version of the class, and the Mage is no different. So it is important to note that since Epoch uses the TBC talent trees as a base, I'll be going over the changes made to those version of the trees. It's also important to note that you do get 61 talent points in Epoch as well, with an extra point being given every few levels. So you can still max out one tree and have a different combination of talents you could never get in original Vanilla WoW. So starting with the Arcane Mage, we do have a few changes. Arcane Blast has been added to the tree down on the 3rd row, giving the ability from TBC that was originally learned at level 64, and this replaced Arcane Fortitude from the original tree. This blasts the target dealing arcane damage, and each time you cast this spell, its casting time is reduced while the mana cost is increased. This stacks up to 3 times for 8 seconds. So it essentially works the same way it worked throughout all of WoW, but they're just giving it to you earlier on since you don't actually hit level 70. Improved Blink has been replaced with Improved Arcane Intellect. This now makes your Arcane Intellect and Brilliance increase the target's maximum mana by an additional percentage, up to 2 points. Arcane Mind has been reworked so that it basically has the same effect that Arcane Fortitude did, along with also increasing your total intellects. So this now costs up to 5 points, and it does boost your int and also your armor by an amount up to 100% of your intellect. Prismatic Cloak now also has the same effect that Improved Blink had, so it reduces all damage taken by 2% for 4 seconds after casting Blink, as well as lowering the chance you'll be hit by all attacks and spells by 30%. This can go up to 2 talent points. And just like it was in TBC, the final capstone ability for Arcane is still going to be slow. This reduces the target's movement speed by 50% and increases the time between range attacks by 50% and their casting time by 50%. If a target is immune to movement speed reduction, this spell enters a 2-minute cooldown but still applies all the other effects. This lasts 15 seconds and can only be used on one target at a time. So overall for the Arcane tree, they merged a few talents together and gave access to Arcane Blast, which again you normally wouldn't get until level 64. And I'll also cover some baseline spells later on that you would normally see in the Arcane rotation. In my opinion, I probably would have liked to see a mix up in the capstone ability here. Slow just seems a little bit underwhelming, but they are following that TBC frame. Let's go ahead and move on to Fire, which is mostly the same as the Burning Crusade, except for one key talent. But first up on the 2nd row, Improved Fire Blast has been changed to just Improved Blasting, which still decreases Fire Blast cooldown, but now also increases the crit chance of your Arcane Blast ability, going up to 3 points. So a little buff to going into the Arcane tree if you go into the Fire tree as well. Master of Schools, a couple of rows down, has been reworked to now include all schools of magic rather than just Fire and Frost. So now all spell crits have a chance to refund up to 30% of their mana cost, again benefiting the Arcane tree. Now going down, there is a new talent that links into Blast Wave called Pyroclastic Burst. This causes your fire spell critical hits to have a 50% chance to increase the damage of your next Pyroblast by 10%. stacking up to 5 times, this equaling up to 50% in total. Now if you do have these stacks on you, it negates your ability to cast Presence of Mind, so you cannot do a POM Pyro instant cast plus 50% damage. The rest of the tree remains the same, with Dragon's Breath still being a capstone ability, which does a frontal cone in front of the caster that deals damage as well as disorienting the targets in front of you. And just like it's always been, any damage will cancel the effect along with it canceling your attack. So like I said before, overall the main additions to Fire were ones done that mainly also help out with Arcane Blast, but the Pyroclastic Burst talent also tries to make them more in the direction of future iterations of Fire Mages, where they're basically built around crits and instant Pyroblasts. It's almost like I'd say like a poor man's version of it, but let me know in the comments how Fire performs on Epoch. I'm pretty curious as to how that plays, if it's still more heavily on slow casts or if it's just more instant stuff. Let me know. But finally we have the Frost tree, and there weren't any really major changes with this tree, just a few reworked talents that added some bonus effects for certain immune targets. So that first minor change is to the Frostbite talent. It essentially does the same thing as before, as in your chill effect has up to a 25% chance to root the target in place, but Epoch has added that if the target is immune to freeze, it will still be considered as being frozen. So I'm assuming this is meant to interact with other talents that deal increased damage to frozen targets, such as Shatter further down the tree. So if your target is root immune and the chill effect procs, the target will still be considered frozen, but not actually rooted to still get that bonus damage. The Piercing Ice talent has been reworked in that in addition to increasing damage done by frost spells, the same effect is tripled if a target is immune to fire. So this can go up to 3 talent points, so a total 6% base, but a fire immune target can get up to 18% increased damage. And there weren't any other changes on the Frost tree, with the capstone ability still being Water Elemental, which just summons a Water Elemental pet. So overall for the Mage specs, it doesn't look like there are many groundbreaking changes other than the addition of Arcane Blast and the Pyroclastic Burst talent in Fire. Everything else looks to play pretty similar to how it did in TBC at level 70. Now let's move into the baseline changes. So the first one, it's not really anywhere for just the Mage specifically, it's a Project Epoch type change, but it is important to note that there is an AoE cap in Project Epoch. This was done to try and limit the dungeon boosting and farming that mages can do in vanilla WoW. But in terms of abilities, the first ones we have is the Arcane Barrage baseline spell, similar to how it works in future expansions. This launches a barrage of missiles at the target, dealing damage and consuming your Arcane Blast stacks. And for each stack consumed, the damage is increased by 15%. So remember that Arcane Blast can stack 3 times in total. So Arcane Barrage can eat all 3 of those stacks, meaning 45% total damage, as well as increasing the damage of your next Arcane missiles by 15% for 8 seconds. And this is on an 8-second cooldown. So again, a key ability to the Arcane Rotation, letting you clear those stacks as soon as you hit 3, so you're not wasting mana. A new Conjure type has been added, that is Conjure Weapon. So starting at level 16, you can conjure your own Intellect Dagger, and as you level up, you can conjure other weapon types like axes and maces. And these weapons scale with the level of the mage. This can also be traded to other players if needed, and they of course disappear after 15 minutes of being logged out. So this is a neat little spell. Maybe if you're in a dungeon or a raid and someone's weapon breaks, you can swap it out temporarily for them. I don't know, let me know what you guys think about this one. It really depends on the stats of the weapon, but from what I've seen, it's more of an int weapon. Stoneheart and Theramore portals and teleports have been added, so just easier ways to travel, as has the Ritual of Refreshment mage table. So mages no longer have to sit there and manually make and pass out food like they did in vanilla. Party members can just all use that table to get their biscuits. Rune of Power has also been added, functioning the same as it worked in future expansions. Puts a rune on the ground and you get a 10% damage buff while standing in it, and this is on a 5-minute cooldown. Molten Armor from TBC has also been added, which increases your crit chance by 3% while also decreasing the chance you'll be crit by 5%. Ice Lance has also been added as a baseline ability from TBC, having the exact same effect, doing a small amount of frost damage but tripling if the target is frozen. So again, Project Epoch leaned heavily into Burning Crusade's gameplay with the mage, more so than I think any other class that I've covered so far. It turned Arcane into a more viable DPS option versus what it was in vanilla with Arcane Blast and Arcane Barrage, while adding in a couple of more PvP strengths for Frost like they had in TBC with the increased bonus damage to frozen targets and more ways to get them frozen or be considered frozen, with Fire still looking to be reliant on some longer casts and big crits. But let's go ahead and move on to Turtle WoW. And since Turtle WoW is more heavily based on vanilla, I'll say it right from the start this time that Turtle WoW there is no AoE cap, so the same as it was in vanilla and classic WoW, mages can do whatever they want to do. So let's go ahead and start with the Arcane tree, and there were a number of changes and additions to actually make Arcane really its own spell school, rather than having basically only arcane missiles in vanilla. as well as talents helping with overall mana management. So first up, Arcane Focus has been swapped with Arcane Absorption, moving Absorption up to the first row. This also has been changed from 5 total points down to 3, and has been reworked to not only increase your resistances and restore mana when you resist, it also is now included that partially resisted spells restore up to a 3% of your maximum mana and can be triggered every 2 seconds. Wand specialization has been reworked so that in addition to increasing wand damage, it also increases your chance to hit with wands, as well as your wand attacks having a chance to restore mana going up to 2 points. Magic Attunement has been reworked so that it is now only 1 talent point and increases the effect of your Amplify Magic and Dampen Magic by 100%, and also allows them to be cast on a target as a debuff spell. So this is a pretty interesting twist because with both Amplify and Dampen Magic, they each have their own individual drawbacks when cast on a friendly target, like taking increased spell damage. So this can now be flipped onto a hostile target instead, which is pretty cool. Improved Arcane Explosion has been changed to Arcane Impact, which increases the crit chance of your arcane spells by up to 6% with 3 talent points. A new talent has been added on the same road called Arcane Rupture. This ruptures your target, dealing arcane damage, and increases the damage and mana cost of your arcane spells by 20% for 8 seconds. So this is somewhat similar to Arcane Barrage that Epoch has, as well as future expansions, as it's another spell to hit outside of arcane missiles while also buffing your arcane missiles. This has a 2.5 second cast time and a 15 second cooldown. Arcane Rupture now also leads into Temporal Convergence, which can go up to 3 talent points. This gives your arcane missiles a chance to reset the cooldown of Arcane Rupture and causes it to return its base mana cost on its next cast once every 15 seconds. For Arcane Meditation, a secondary effect has been added in that if you are below 35% mana, the initial mana regen while casting effect is tripled, going up to 3 talent points. Arcane Instability has been reworked to move up in the tree, so this now causes your successful damaging arcane spells to have up to a 25% chance to erupt, consuming 2% of your base mana, dealing 25% more damage up to 3 talent points. Accelerated Arcana has also been added, which increases the casting speed of your arcane spells by 5%, and in addition, the casting speed increase effects increase the cooldown recovery speed of your arcane spells and the tick speed of your arcane missiles, reducing their duration. So an overall cooldown and casting buff for all of the arcane school. Arcane Potency has also been added, increasing the crit damage bonus of your arcane spells up to 100% with 2 talent points. Resonance Cascade is a new talent where your successful damaging arcane spells have up to a 20% chance to duplicate for 50% of the damage, with this effect being able to trigger off of itself, and duplicated arcane missiles are then channeled with the original cast. So similar to future mastery specs and other turtle talents, basically you get a free cast of another spell while still casting the original spell when it triggers. Arcane Power is still the capstone ability and has been reworked, with it now increasing your casting speed by 30% while draining 1% of your maximum mana every 1 second, and reducing all of your mana gain by 50% while it's active. If you fall below 10% maximum mana, you instantly die if you have this buff. It lasts 20 seconds and cannot be cancelled. So this last spell basically sums up Arcane, I think. They seem to be a crazy glass cannon damage type spec, with a lot of talents focused on overall mana sustainability, hopefully keeping you alive throughout the entire use of Arcane Power, even though there is a 50% cut to mana regen during it. Which I'm going to assume most mages are going to be using Arcane Power at the start of every fight or after Evocation is cast. Now let's go ahead on to Fire Mage now, where there weren't too many changes overall. Improved Fire Blast now also reduces the global cooldown of your Fire Blast spell up to 0.5 seconds with 3 talent points. Improved Scorch has been changed to just Fire Vulnerability, with a similar effect, except now Fire Blast also has up to a 100% chance to cause your target to gain a Fire Vulnerability debuff, increasing the fire damage taken by 3%, stacking up to 5 times. Blast Wave has been moved to no longer have any talent linking to it, so Pyroblast now links into Hot Streak, which is a talent that Fire Mages get in the future expansions. This gives your Fireball and Fire Blast crits up to a 100% chance to grant Hot Streak, which reduces the cast time of your next Pyroblast by 1 second per stack for 3 minutes, stacking up to 5 times. So while Epoch had their Pyroclastic Burst talent that was more about Pyroblast damage, Turtle went for more the traditional Fire Mage route, where crits shorten or make your Pyroblast an instant cast. So the final capstone ability in this tree is still going to be Combustion, which did not change from vanilla. So when activated, the spell causes each of your fire damage spell hits to increase your crit chance with fire spells by 10% and is cancelled when you've gotten 3 crits. So overall with Hot Streak, crit is definitely the most important stat for Fire Mages, exactly how it is in future retail expansions. I will say I did play Fire Mage in future expansions like Legion and Beyond, and when I was on retail, it was one of the most fun specs I've ever played, with just instant cast and big numbers going around. So they're kind of doing a vanilla version of that without making it super instant. And finally, let's look at the Frost tree. So the big focus of Turtle on Frost was to try to add a little bit of spice to the vanilla rotation, which just consisted of spamming Frostbolt. So first up, Piercing Ice and Ice Shards have been swapped places on the tree, giving you an earlier chance to get some extra damage in. Improved Blizzard Slow effect has been nerfed a bit, maxing out now at 40% rather than 65% in original vanilla. Icicles is a new talent on the same row as Ice Block. This is meant to be a new rotational channeled ability for Frost, and when cast, it freezes you in place and launches icicles at the target, and any damage taken has a high chance to shatter your own freeze in place ability and cancel the channel, which deals 30% of your base health as frost damage to you when this happens. And even if you do cancel the channel, you'll still be rooted for the entire duration. So this has a 30-second cooldown and a 5-second total channel with a 30-yard range. This talent also links into Flash Freeze, which reads, if an effect that causes a target to freeze is not applied due to the target being permanently immune to freeze effects, you have up to a 100% chance to activate Flash Freeze instead, which resets the cooldown of Icicles and reduces the duration and time between each Icicle by 80% for your next cast. So this is going to be for those freeze immune targets similar to talents that Project Epoch had. This lets you just get some extra icicle casts in if a target has immunity. And finally, as the capstone ability, it is still going to be Frost Barrier, but to encourage overall uptime on the ability, a 15% frost damage buff has been added when the shield is active. So again, Turtle really focused on giving Frost more of an identity by adding in the Icicle and Flash Freeze talent, while also encouraging the use of Frost Barrier more just to give them another button to press. I should have mentioned this earlier as well, but the Shatter talent in the Frost tree, the critical strike chance bonus has been reduced from a maximum of 50% down to 35%, so a slight nerf there. So let's go ahead and move into the baseline changes for the Mage in Turtle WoW. There's a new spell called Arcane Surge. This blasts your target with an overload of mana, dealing arcane damage, and this is only usable after one of your spells are fully or partially resisted. And this spell itself cannot be resisted or even partially resisted. This has a flat mana cost, it's an instant cast with an 8-second cooldown that has a 65% spell power scaling going up to 4 ranks in total. Arcane Missile's spell power scaling coefficient per missile for ranks above level 20 has been increased by roughly 4%, so just an overall buff to missile damage. To go along with the talent in the Arcane tree, both Dampen Magic and Amplify Magic now only have 1 rank. And instead of having flat numbers, it now has percentages. So Dampen reduces magic damage taken by 2% and healing taken by 1%, while Amplify increases healing taken by 2% and magic damage taken by 1%, and again, if you respect into it, you can apply these to a hostile target. And finally, the overall mana cost of Arcane Intellect and Arcane Brilliance has been greatly reduced, making it way easier to buff raids and party members. Now, there were some other percentage and cooldown based changes to abilities in the latest patch for Turtle WoW, but no new abilities. I'll leave a link to the Turtle forums in the patch notes if you want to see everything that changed. So now that we've seen both iterations of the Mage, let's try and take a step back real quick. Project Epoch and Turtle WoW both took very different approaches to reworking the Mage. Epoch leaned heavily into the Burning Crusade-style gameplay, bringing in iconic abilities like Arcane Blast, Arcane Barrage, Molten Armor, Ice Lance, and Rune of Power from the future, essentially creating a TBC Wrath hybrid mage that plays more like an early pre-patch version of retail. The goal there is less about reinventing vanilla and more about dropping modernized rotations into the level 60 setting, and of course they do have the AoE cap on Project Epoch. Turtle WoW, on the other hand, stayed true to vanilla's rotation, but expanded on each spec so they all feel viable. With more complex rotations than just the Frostbolt spam, Arcane got new spells like Arcane Rupture and Resonance Cascade for a true DPS identity, while Fire was given the Hot Streak talent to emphasize crit change into Pyroblast like in future expansions. And Frost picked up Icicles and Flash Freeze to make the rotation a bit more dynamic. Unlike Epoch, Turtle did keep that no AoE cap design from vanilla, which leans into the vanilla's raw farming potential while deepening spec-specific gameplay for the Mage overall. But there you have it, that is all I have in regard to the Mage class for both of these servers. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know your feedback in the comment section down below. Next up, we'll be taking a look at the Druid class, and I'm trying to get these out on an every other day type schedule, so we'll see if I'm able to stick to it and, people don't lose interest because I didn't get these videos out fast enough. But thank you guys for watching. This is Double T Gaming, and I will see you guys in the next video.